The autumn wind moved through Riverside Park like a restless spirit, rattling the trees and carrying the laughter of children across the open fields. Dry leaves skittered along the path, catching on the wheels of a lone wheelchair that sat still. Near the swings, David Miller's hands gripped the handle so tightly his knuckles whitened, as though sheer force could keep the world from collapsing any further around him. He had been in control of Empire's companies, markets, boardrooms, but here, in the silence of a Sunday afternoon, he felt like a man with nothing left to bargain with. Emma sat quietly in the chair, her legs hidden beneath a checkered blanket, her face pale in the cold light. Her eyes, too large for her small face, were fixed on the swings in front of her, where children pushed each other higher and higher, their shrieks cutting through the crisp air. Once, long ago, she had been among them, chasing, climbing, leaping into her mother's arms. That world had ended for years ago in twisted metal and shattering glass. David could still hear the siren sometimes when he closed his eyes. He shifted. Behind her, his phone buzzing again in his pocket, another urgent call from his assistant. He didn't need to check to know it was about the merger, or the lawsuits, or the collapsing stock price. In another life, before the accident, he would have answered without hesitation, barking orders, moving money like a chess master sliding pieces across a board. But now the weight of the device felt like an insult. He let it buzz until the sound died, ignored just like the last 5 calls. The world might think David Miller was still a titan of industry, but the truth was simpler, crueler. He was just a father who couldn't fix the one thing that mattered most. Daddy. Emma's voice was so soft it nearly disappeared into the wind. David leaned closer, desperate to catch every syllable. She rarely spoke at all these days. Her words locked behind a wall of sadness. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Her eyes moved away from the swings, past the laughing children, toward the far side of the playground. "That boy," she whispered. "He's staring at me." David followed her gaze. At first he thought she meant one of the children on the monkey bars, or maybe a parent standing nearby, but no, this was different. The boy stood alone, 20 feet away, his posture stiff, his dark hair falling into his face. His clothes were worn, but clean, the kind a child wore when every dollar had been stretched to its breaking point. What unsettled David most were the boy's eyes, gray, unblinking, too old for a face so young. The boy didn't look away even when David's stare locked onto him. The park noises seemed to fade. The laughter of other children dulled, and for one strange moment it was as if the entire place held its breath. Emma's hand trembled slightly on the edge of her blanket, and David felt a familiar surge of protectiveness rise in his chest. He straightened, his voice firm, carrying across the open space. "Can I help you?" The boy didn't answer right away. He only took a slow step forward, then another, his eyes never leaving Emma's. Something in his calm, deliberate movement unsettled David more than an outright threat would have. He glanced down at his daughter, whose lips parted in a mixture of fear and curiosity. The phone in David's pocket buzzed again, but he no longer noticed. For the first time in years, his attention wasn't divided between Emma and his empire. The world seemed to narrow to a thin thread of autumn air, a silent girl in a wheelchair, and a strange boy who walked toward them as if he had been waiting for this very moment. The boy's steps were steady, deliberate, each one scraping against the cracked path as if he had all the time in the world. David's instinct screamed to move, to block his daughter from this stranger. Yet something in those gray eyes held him still. They weren't the eyes of a normal child. They carried weight, almost like they had seen too much of life too early. Emma's breath quickened, though not with fear. Her small hands clenched the arms of her wheelchair as though she were waiting for something impossible. "Stay behind me, Emma," David murmured, stepping half a pace forward. His voice came out harsher than intended, the voice of a CEO used to being obeyed. But the boy didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as if he could see through David and into Emma's silent longing. "She wants to play on the swings," the boy said suddenly. His voice was calm, almost detached. Yet every word rang clear. The statement cut through the air like a blade. David froze, his jaw tightening. "She can't," he snapped before he could stop himself. The truth came out raw, sharpened by years of grief. But the boy didn't argue. He simply walked closer and lowered himself to his knees beside the chair, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged there. His presence was disarming, his movements gentle. He looked at Emma directly, ignoring David altogether. and whispered, "All kids want to swing. What's your name?" Emma's lips trembled. It had been so long since anyone her age had spoken to her like she wasn't broken. "Emma," she whispered, her voice almost too small to hear. The boy's mouth twitched into the faintest shadow of a smile. "I'm Lucas." His gray eyes softened for the first time. "Give me your hands, Emma." David's muscles tensed. His protective instincts flared like fire. He stepped forward, ready to pull this strange child away, but in that moment, Lucas's eyes lifted and locked with his. David felt something he couldn't explain, an intensity that rooted him in place. It wasn't arrogance or defiance. It was certainty. The kind of look he had seen only in surgeons making life or death calls, or in soldiers who had accepted their fate. For the first time in years, David, the man who had stared down billion-dollar deals, felt powerless. Emma's hands, trembling but drawn by some invisible pull, slowly rose from her lap. She extended them toward Lucas with a trust that shocked even her father. Their small palms met, fingers curling together, and then everything shifted. Lucas's eyes slid shut, his body shuddering as if gripped by an unseen force. His thin frame trembled violently, but his grip on Emma's hands never loosened. A strange warmth seemed to spill into the air, faint but undeniable. Like a current passing between them, Emma gasped, her chest heaving, her eyes flying wide. "Daddy." Her voice broke, sharp with wonder. My legs feel funny." David's heart hammered so hard it hurt. He dropped to his knees, clutching the sides of the wheelchair, staring at Emma's covered legs in disbelief. "Emma," his voice cracked. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze fell downward. Her lips parted in shock. Beneath the blanket, her right foot twitched. Just a flutter at first, like a sleeping limb awakening, then a stronger jerk, deliberate. David's throat went dry. "Daddy," she whispered again, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I can feel them." David yanked the blanket aside, and his world shattered. Slowly, shakily, Emma pressed her feet against the footrest and pushed. Her body lifted, rising unsteadily, legs trembling like a newborn deer. She stood. The sound of the playground vanished. Children stopped running. Swings stilled mid-arc. Parents turned in stunned silence. David's hands went limp on the chair as his daughter, his paralyzed daughter, took her first trembling step in for years. Emma's sobs turned to laughter, wild and breathless. "Daddy, I'm walking. I'm really walking." But David's joy collided with terror when he looked back at Lucas. The boy's skin had gone ghostly pale, sweat glistening on his brow. His breathing came in shallow gasps, each one ragged and desperate. The power in him seemed to drain like water from a broken vessel. "Lucas," David shouted, reaching toward him. The boy swayed once, twice, then collapsed hard onto the ground, his small body convulsing before going limp. David dropped beside him, cradling the boy's head in his trembling hands, panic searing his chest. "What did you do?" His voice was raw, frantic. Lucas's gray eyes flickered open, weak but burning. With desperation, his lips moved, the words spilling out in fragments, barely audible. "Please, my grandma. She's dying. Room for B. St. Mary's Hospital. Medicine, please." His voice broke. His eyes rolled back, and he went still in David's arms. Behind them, Emma stood frozen, too afraid to move, afraid the miracle would vanish if she did. Her tears glittered in the cold sunlight. "Daddy." He gave me my legs back. David looked from his daughter standing, breathing, glowing with new life too. The frail boy in his arms, who had given everything to make the impossible happen. And deep inside, David knew this moment wasn't an ending. It was only the beginning of something far greater and far more dangerous. The weight of Lucas's frail body in his arms shook David to his core. He had carried million-dollar deals, billion-dollar secrets, but never something like this. A boy who had done the impossible, then collapsed as if the very act had stolen his strength. Emma stood a few feet away, trembling, her legs still wobbling beneath her, but holding, truly holding. After 4 years of lifeless stillness, the image tore through David's soul. He wanted to lift her, spin her, rejoice, yet the boy in his arms gasped like someone drowning, pulling him into another storm of fear. Around them, the air had changed. The playground, once filled with laughter, had fallen into an eerie hush. Parents whispered, clutching their children close. Phones were raised, tiny red lights flashing as strangers filmed, capturing Emma's first steps and Lucas's collapse. David's mind raced. This wasn't just a miracle. It was a spectacle. The world outside this park would soon know. His daughter's miracle was already slipping from the intimacy of family into the harsh glare of public curiosity. He scooped Lucas up, his hands trembling, and carried him to the Tesla parked along the curb. Emma followed on unsteady feet, clutching the car door for balance, her breathless laughter clashing with the fear in her eyes. Every step she took was both a triumph and a knife twisting in David's chest. Lucas had given her life, but at what cost to himself? In the back seat, Lucas stirred weakly, his lips parted, dry and cracked, his voice barely a whisper. Not the hospital. Don't. They'll take me again. His eyes darted, panicked, as if shadows from old memories still stalked him. David tightened his grip on the steering wheel. You need a doctor. You need help. Lucas shook his head violently, tears streaking his pale cheeks. You don't understand. They came before. When I was 5, I fixed Mrs. Chen's heart in the grocery store. She was dying. I touched her and she lived. After that, men came. White coats, suits. They wanted to take me away. Grandma ran. We've been running ever since. His voice cracked. A child's body carrying the weight of an old man's fear. If they find me now, they'll never let me go. Emma reached across the seat, her small hand covering his trembling fingers. Daddy won't let them. Daddy's strong. He can help you. The words pierced David deeper than any corporate boardroom battle ever had. For years, Emma had been quiet, withdrawn, her trust broken by tragedy. Now she spoke with conviction, standing because of this boy, and already defending him. His daughter believed in him again, and in the strange child whose very existence defied logic. Lucas, David said carefully, catching the boy's gaze in the rearview mirror. What does your grandmother need? The boy's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. Kesavin. For her liver. The doctor said it's experimental. Insurance won't pay. Costs $8,000 a month. She's all I have. Please, mister, just help her. David's throat tightened. He knew that drug too well. It was developed in part by his own company, sold at a price meant only for the wealthiest or the insured. He could have it delivered tomorrow, for free, without anyone asking questions. But the weight of the choice crushed him. If Lucas was telling the truth about his gift, if the world discovered a child could heal with touch, guess if it wouldn't matter. Governments, corporations, labs, everyone would hunt him. Emma leaned closer, her eyes wide, pleading. Daddy, he gave me back my legs. We have to help his grandma. David's chest heaved. The voice of a CEO whispered of liability, exposure, disaster. But the voice of a father, the voice that had been buried under years of grief and guilt, told him the choice was already made. He pressed his foot to the accelerator, steering them toward St. Mary's Hospital. The city lights flickered ahead, and with them, the faint outline of a path he could not yet see. But as the Tesla moved down the darkened streets, David caught sight of something in the mirror. A black SUV sliding into traffic behind them, too slow to be casual, too close to be innocent. Its tinted windows reflected nothing but the dying light of evening. His gut twisted. Someone else already knew, and the miracle that had just given his daughter life might soon cost them all everything. The Tesla's headlights cut a pale ribbon through Portland's darkening streets. David gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles ached, his eyes flicking every few seconds to the rearview mirror. The black SUV still followed, keeping just enough distance to avoid suspicion, but close enough to let him know it wasn't a coincidence. In the back seat, Lucas lay slumped against the window, his breathing shallow. His thin chest rose and fell, like each breath cost him more than he could spare. Beside him, Emma sat without her wheelchair for the first time in years, her legs folded beneath her on the seat. Every so often she would glance down at them, touch her knees as though to make sure they were real, then reach out to squeeze Lucas's hand. She said nothing, but her wide, tear-filled eyes spoke for her. Don't let him die. David's mind spun. He had spent decades calculating risks, manipulating numbers, orchestrating billion-dollar moves with cold precision, but nothing in those sterile boardrooms had prepared him for this. A child who could do what science declared impossible, a daughter who had just walked again, and a shadow closing in from behind at the hospital. David pulled up to the emergency entrance, shoving the car into park. He half expected the SUV to swing in beside them, men in suits spilling out, but it rolled smoothly past, disappearing into the night. Still, the unease lingered inside. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, cold and sharp. Nurses rushed patients. On gurneys, phones rang, machines beeped. David carried Lucas in his arms, Emma hobbling at his side, leaning on him when her legs threatened to buckle. "Sir, do you need help?" a nurse asked, eyeing the pale boy. David shook his head quickly, his CEO voice slipping out, commanding, firm. "We're going to room for B. His grandmother is there." He didn't wait for a reply, striding down the corridor like he owned the place, which, in a sense, he almost did. Miller Pharmaceuticals funded half the research wings in this hospital. When he pushed open the door to room for B, the sterile smell of antiseptic hit him first. An elderly woman lay in the bed, skin thin as paper, tubes snaking into her arms. Her face was lined with years of struggle, but her eyes, when they opened and settled on Lucas in David's arms, glowed with fierce, maternal love. "Lucas." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "What have you done?" David set the boy gently on the bed beside her. Lucas stirred, whispering, "Grandma, she's walking. I made her walk." The woman's eyes filled with tears, but not of joy, of sorrow. She cupped his face with trembling hands. "I told you, child, never for yourself, never for glory. Each gift you give takes a piece of you." David stiffened. Her words carried weight, truth carved by experience. "What do you mean?" he demanded, his voice sharper than intended. She looked up at him, seeing not a CEO, but a desperate father. His gift is not magic. It is sacrifice. Every healing drains him. That's why he collapses, why he fades. One day, it will take more than he has left. Emma gasped, clutching her mouth. She stumbled to the bed, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, he can't. He gave me my legs back. He can't die for me." Lucas smiled faintly, his lips pale. "It was worth it, Emma." David's chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. His mind reeled. If what the grandmother said was true, then Emma's miracle had come at the cost of Lucas's life force. And if word of this boy spread, if the world understood what he could do, he wouldn't just be chased. He would be consumed. The door creaked open behind them. A nurse stepped in, her eyes flicking from Emma standing on her own to Lucas, pale and trembling, then back again. Suspicion sharpened her gaze. "What happened here?" she asked carefully. David knew that look. He had seen it in boardrooms when rivals smelled weakness, in investors when they spotted opportunity. This wasn't curiosity, it was recognition. And outside, in the hum of the night, the black SUV might still be waiting. He straightened, his protective instincts roaring to life. Whatever this was, whatever danger was closing in, one thing was certain: if the world took notice, Lucas wouldn't last a week. And for the first time in years, David Miller, the man who had built empires, realized his true war was only just beginning. Not in boardrooms, not in markets, but in the shadows gathering around a frail boy with gray eyes and a gift that could change everything. The room felt too small, as if the air itself was shrinking under the weight of secrets. Machines hummed around the frail old woman, but her eyes never left Lucas, who leaned weakly against her shoulder. Emma clung to the edge of the bed, her new legs trembling beneath her, as if her body itself feared the truth. David stood near the foot of the bed, his broad frame tense, his mind clawing for logic, but logic had no place here. The grandmother's voice was soft but steady, shaped by years of carrying burdens too heavy for her frame. "You don't know what you've brought into your life, Mr. Miller," she said. "You see a miracle, but I see the shadow of a curse." David bristled. "A curse?" My daughter stood today. For the first time in 4 years, she walked. "If that's a curse, then..." He broke off, his voice cracking under the memory of Emma's laughter. He forced himself to swallow the storm inside. "If that's a curse, I'll take it 1,000 times over." The woman shook her head slowly, sadness deepening the lines in her face. "You don't understand. Lucas's gift isn't endless. It drains him piece by piece. He gives away what keeps him alive. When he was a toddler, he healed a stray dog broken on the road. He was sick for weeks. By 5, he saved a woman's life in a grocery store, and men came sniffing around, promising protection. What they wanted was ownership." Her voice faltered, then hardened again. "We ran because I wouldn't let them cage him. Since then, every place we've stayed, he's left a trail of whispers. Every time he gives life, we're forced to leave another one behind." Emma's small voice broke through the heaviness. "But he gave me my legs. That means..." He gave me his life." Lucas lifted his head just enough to look at her, his gray eyes dim, but unwavering. "Don't cry, Emma. It was worth it. You were meant to run again." Her sobs filled the sterile air, fragile, shattering. David turned away, his chest tight, his mind raging against the helplessness of it. He had spent his life solving problems with money, power, force of will. But what price could buy back this boy's fading strength? What empire could bargain with a force that burned through his body like fire each time he healed? Then came the knock, 3 sharp raps against the door, too precise, too heavy to belong to a nurse. David's instincts kicked in like alarms. He stepped forward, blocking Emma and Lucas with his body. The grandmother's hands gripped the bed sheets, her eyes suddenly wild. "They found us," she whispered. The door opened, and 2 men stepped inside. Their suits were dark, their faces calm in the way predators are calm before they strike. One held a clipboard, the other a small black case. Their badges flashed briefly. Some government branch David didn't recognize. "Mr. Miller," the taller one said, his tone smooth. "We understand you've had an unusual evening." His eyes flicked to Emma standing on her own, then to Lucas pale on the bed. "We'd like to ask some questions, privately." Emma pressed closer to David's leg, her new strength faltering. Under terror, Lucas's fingers tightened around his grandmother's hand. As if he knew the future was clawing at the door, David's CEO instincts surged. He had faced hostile takeovers, ruthless rivals, governments threatening to break his company apart. But this was different. This wasn't about numbers or power. It was about lives. Theirs. His daughters. Lucas's. "You can ask your questions some other time," David said coldly, his voice sharpened with authority. "Right now, this boy needs rest, and my daughter needs safety. You'll leave this room." The agents didn't move. The one with the case set it gently on the counter, snapping it open. Inside, David caught a glimpse of syringes, vials, instruments that didn't belong in a hospital's routine care. The shorter man spoke now, his smile tight and false. "Mr. Miller, we're here to help. But if what we've heard is true, that this boy healed your daughter, then we're beyond routine medicine. You, of all people, should understand the implications." His words dripped with veiled threats. The world didn't see Lucas as a child. To them, he was a resource, a discovery, a weapon. David felt Emma's small hand slide into his, her palm damp with fear. She looked up at him, her eyes full of the same trust she'd had when she was 4 years old. Before the accident, before the silence, that look broke him. He stepped forward, his shadow cutting across the men. His voice came out low, almost a growl. "You're not taking him. Not tonight. Not ever." For a tense moment, the room stood on the edge of eruption. The agents' eyes hardened, their hands twitching near their jackets. Emma's breath hitched. The grandmother whispered a prayer under her breath, and then Lucas, pale and trembling, spoke again, his voice a faint echo of strength. "Please, don't fight. They'll never stop. But maybe we can run one more time." The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Somewhere in the hospital, an alarm wailed faintly. The world outside this room was moving, closing in. David realized with a sickening certainty, this wasn't just about saving Lucas's grandmother anymore. It was about keeping Lucas alive long enough to have a choice in his own fate. And now, the chase had truly begun. The hallway outside room for be pulsed with the restless energy of a hospital at night, machines humming, stretchers squeaking, nurses calling for meds. Yet behind the door, the atmosphere was suffocating, a fragile silence poised to shatter. David stood tall, a barrier between the men in suits and the fragile trio behind him, Emma clutching his sleeve, Lucas pale as ash against his grandmother's side, and the old woman whispering prayers beneath her breath. The taller agent closed the black case on the counter with a soft snap, his smile gone. "Mr. Miller, you misunderstand. This isn't optional. What happened in that park? It's already on half a dozen phones. By morning, it'll be everywhere. The world doesn't stop turning for secrets. You think you can shield this boy?" His voice hardened, cutting through the room like a knife. "You can't shield the son." David's pulse hammered. He'd dealt with men like this before, calm, dangerous, certainly already on the ground they stood on. But this wasn't a boardroom, and the stakes weren't quarterly earnings. His daughter had taken her first steps tonight. He wasn't about to let them take away the boy who had given her back her life. He drew in a steadying breath. "Get out," he said, Before I make this hospital a battlefield, you won't win." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the agents exchanged a glance. Silent understanding passing between them, they stepped back, slipping into the hallway. But not without one final warning. "You've got hours, not days. Use them wisely." The door clicked shut. Emma buried her face against David's side, trembling. The grandmother's eyes burned with a grim knowing. They'll be back. They'll never stop. David paced to the window, pushing aside the blinds. Outside, the parking lot glowed with harsh white lamps. The black SUV was back, idling in the shadows. And there another figure leaned against a lamppost, pretending to smoke. But his eyes were on the building. The walls were closing in. His phone buzzed in his pocket, the vibration sharp and insistent. He pulled it out, his assistant's name, flashing. He answered in a low whisper. "David, it's everywhere. Videos of Emma walking. Social feeds are exploding. News crews are circling corporate headquarters. The board is panicking. They want to know if it's true if a child did this." David's chest tightened. Already, the world was spinning. His empire, his reputation, his daughter's miracle entangled in a storm of profit and fear. He hung up without a word, turning back to the boy who had started it all. Lucas's eyes fluttered open, weak but aware. "They'll never let me go," he whispered. "They'll use me, like a machine, until there's nothing left." Emma crawled onto the bed, slipping her arms around him. "No, we won't let them. You gave me back my legs. I'll fight for you." Her words cracked David wide open. For years she had been silent, broken, swallowed by grief. Now she was fierce, standing for someone else. And he realized Lucas hadn't just given her back her body. He had lit her spirit again. The grandmother reached across the bed, gripping David's hand. Her palm was thin, trembling, but her grip fierce. "You're a man of power," she said. "But power is worthless if it's not used for the right fight. Are you willing to fight for him?" David looked at his daughter standing because of this boy and felt the answer burn in his chest. "Yes," he said, his voice steady. "I'll fight." The old woman nodded once. "Then we must move." Tonight, alarms wailed faintly somewhere down the corridor, an emergency call. Or perhaps something else. The hospital no longer felt safe. It felt like a trap, tightening around them. David turned to Emma, brushing her hair back from her damp face. "Sweetheart, we're leaving now. You stay close to me." She nodded fiercely, gripping Lucas's hand. David pulled out his phone again, but this time not to answer a board. He called a different number, an old contact, someone who owed him favors from darker days. A quiet voice answered. "You owe me," David said. "I need an exit. No questions asked." When he ended the call, he exhaled slowly. He had never smuggled lives before, only deals. But tonight, the lines had blurred. CEO, father, protector, they were all the same now. The grandmother began to gather Lucas's few belongings, a worn backpack, a sweater too big for him, a small book of prayers. Emma wrapped her arms around Lucas, steadying him as he tried to sit up, his body shaking. The floor trembled faintly, footsteps, heavy, coordinated, more than to this time. David's heart slammed. They weren't waiting for dawn. The storm was here. He grabbed the four from Lucas's arm, the monitor cords, ripping them free before the boy could protest. Lucas cried out in pain, but David steadied him, his voice fierce. "I won't let them cage you." The door handle turned. A shadow fell across the floor. Emma gasped. The grandmother whispered one last prayer. Lucas clutched David's shirt with weak fingers, and David Miller, the CEO who had once built an empire of steel and glass, now prepared to fight with nothing but his will, his fists, and the fire of a father who had something to lose again. The door burst inward, slamming against the wall, and for an instant the fluorescent lights above flickered like the building itself recoiled. For men in dark suits filled the doorway, their movements crisp, efficient, the kind of precision born from long rehearsals in situations just like this, to carry cases. One's hand hovered near his jacket, heavy with the shape of a weapon. David stepped in front of the bed without hesitation, his arms outstretched, his body a shield. Emma clutched Lucas, who tried to sit up despite the pallor draining his face. The grandmother whispered a broken prayer, her voice shaking but steady enough to rise above the hum of machines. "Mr. Miller," the lead agent said smoothly, his voice almost gentle, "step aside. You know this isn't about you anymore. This boy doesn't belong to you. or to her, or even to himself. He belongs to science, to humanity. His eyes flicked to Emma, standing shaky but upright on legs that had been dead for years. You, more than anyone, understand what his gift means. Think of the billions who suffer cancer, heart disease, paralysis. He can end it all. One boy for billions. David's fist clenched. He had heard arguments like this before. Profit over humanity, numbers over lives. But this wasn't theory. This was a child, barely 8, trembling in his daughter's arms. He's not a commodity, David growled. He's not a cure to be bottled. He's a boy, and you'll have to go through me to touch him. The agents exchanged a glance. The tension in the room thickened until every breath felt like broken glass. One step forward, voice lower now. You've built an empire on medicine. You of all people should know, every miracle has a cost. What's one boy's life compared to millions saved? Emma's voice shattered the stalemate. He's not one boy. He's my friend. Her voice trembled. But she held Lucas tighter. He gave me back my legs, not for money, not for glory, for me. And if you take him, you take me too. For the first time, the agents faltered. Her small figure, her fierce trembling defiance, cut deeper than any corporate argument could. David felt his chest swell with pride and pain. His daughter was speaking again, standing again, alive again, and he would burn the world before letting them break her spirit. Then Lucas stirred, his gray eyes open, shining faintly, almost glowing in the harsh fluorescent light. His voice was faint, but filled with a strange, eerie strength. They'll never stop. They'll take me. They'll take everything. But maybe they can if I choose. David's head snapped. Toward him. Lucas. No. But the boy's small hands were already glowing faintly where they clutched Emma's arms. His whole body trembled, convulsing with effort. Emma gasped. Feeling warmth surged through her like fire, her legs solidifying, her trembling vanishing. The grandmother cried out, clutching his arm. No. Lucas, you'll give too much. David lunged forward, trying to pull him back, but a burst of energy radiated outward, stopping him cold. The agents stumbled back, shielding their faces. Lights overhead flickered, alarms blared. Lucas was pouring himself out, emptying the last reserves of whatever mysterious force lived inside him. Emma's tears streamed down her cheeks. Stop, please, stop, don't do this for me. But Lucas smiled faintly, his lips cracked and pale. Not just for you, for all of you, so they'll see I'm not their machine. I'm human. And then his body sagged, the glow fading, his breath rattling in his chest. David caught him before he collapsed completely, holding the frail boy against him like a dying ember. Lucas's gray eyes fluttered open one last time. Protect her, he whispered. Protect everyone. His eyes rolled back and his body went still. The agents froze. The glow had vanished. But Emma now stood firm, strong, radiant. Even the grandmother seemed renewed, her frail breathing easier, her eyes bright. Whatever Lucas had given, it was gone from him now, transferred to those he loved. David rose slowly, cradling a limp child in his arms, his voice breaking into a roar that shook the sterile walls. You see him as a tool, but he was a boy. He chose love over your greed, and I swear to God, if any of you come near him, I will bring down everything I have built to bury you. The agents stepped back. For the first time, hesitation cracked their cold facades. The power in the room wasn't in Lucas's fading body anymore. It was in Emma standing tall, in the grandmother's fiery eyes, in David's unbreakable resolve. Security alarms shrieked. Doors slammed in distant corridors. Somewhere outside, sirens wailed. The press and the public converging on the hospital. The miracle could no longer be hidden. David turned his back on the men, carrying Lucas in his arms, Emma and the grandmother at his side. He wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a father, a protector, a witness to a gift that defied the world's hunger to own it. And as he walked down the hallway, past the blinking exit signs and the chaos gathering beyond, one truth carved itself into his soul. The miracle was never just Emma walking again. The miracle was love fierce enough to defy empires, and a boy willing to burn himself so others could live. The world would never be the same.